Welcome to Stories Creeper. Tonight, we take you to a place most people forget. But this house remembers everything that IT remembers, the secrets whispered behind locked doors, the pain buried under floorboards, the love lost in silence, and the shadows that never left. This is the story of a man haunted by what he couldn't face, a woman hiding from what she couldn't forget, and a house that held on to it all, long after they tried to walk away. Close your eyes, let the world fall quiet, and enter. Every room remembers. I hadn't planned on coming back. Not to this town, not to this house, not to the version of myself I left behind here, waiting in the dust and cobwebs. The sky was already bruised with the colors of late evening when I turned onto the narrow gravel path that led to the house I swore I'd never return to. It stood alone on a hill that time seemed to have forgotten, its paint peeled, its windows hollow like the eyes of a ghost, its porch sagging with age and memory. Everything about it felt wrong, and yet, like a magnet, it pulled me closer that I was tired of running, of pretending, of not remembering that my fingers trembled slightly as I turned the old brass knob, the door giving way with a groan that sounded like it was relieved to be opened. The air inside was cool and stale, filled with the scent of mold and old wood. Dust floated lazily in the dying light that filtered through the high windows. The house was still, not empty, but still, as if it were holding its breath. I hadn't been here in over a decade, not since the night everything unraveled, and yet every step I took through the familiar creaking hallway brought me face to face with memories I thought I had buried. My mother's laughter echoing from the kitchen, my brother's footsteps racing upstairs, the quiet sobs I used to muffle into my pillow. The walls, they remembered everything. I made my way into the living room. The furniture was draped in white sheets like pale ghosts waiting to be summoned. I pulled one down from the armchair near the window and sank into it, exhausted. My bones ached with more than just travel. They ached with history. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees. I closed my eyes, and that's when I heard her voice. You came back. It was soft, almost unsure, but unmistakably real. I opened my eyes and stood up sharply. There, standing in the archway between the living room and the hallway, was a woman. She looked exactly the same, and yet different. Worn, stronger. A scar sliced through her left eyebrow, and her eyes carried a weight I had never seen before. A weight I understood. Leah, I whispered. She didn't smile. She didn't move. She just stood there, watching me like a ghost in her own right. I didn't think you'd be here, I said after a pause. I could say the same about you. We stood in silence for a long moment. A decade of things unspoken hung between us. Finally, she stepped closer. This house, it doesn't let go, does it? I shook my head slowly. No, it never did. We talked that night. Not about the things we should have. Not yet. Instead, we danced around the edges of old wounds, speaking in half-truths and cautious glances. I asked her if she had stayed all these years. She said no, but she never said where she went. I didn't press. I knew what it was like to run and not want to explain. When she finally left the room, I wandered upstairs. Every door I passed felt like a heartbeat I had forgotten. I paused at the one at the end of the hall, my old bedroom. I pushed it open slowly. Nothing had changed. The bed was still made. The posters were still on the wall. My handwriting still marked the edges of the mirror with faded quotes and angry words. I stepped inside, and the room inhaled me. And then I saw it. A letter, folded neatly on the pillow that IT had my name on it. I picked it up, my fingers numb. The handwriting was mine, but I didn't remember writing it. To whoever I become, if you ever make it back here, know this. You weren't crazy. It wasn't your fault. And yes, she loved you. Even when she left, there are things you've forgotten, things the house remembers. Trust it. Trust her. Trust yourself. Whatever you do, don't go into the basement alone. My heart dropped that I read it again. And again that I didn't remember writing this. But I believed every word that I sat there for what felt like hours, the letter trembling in my hands. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. I just listened to the house creaking, to the wind shifting, to the low hum of something waiting. The next morning, Leo was gone. No note. No goodbye, just silence. And in that silence, the house stirred. IT began slowly. The scent of lavender in the upstairs hallway. My mother's perfume, a familiar song playing faintly from the living room radio, one that hadn't worked in years. And then, one night, the mirror in the hallway fogged up. Words appeared. You have to remember. I thought I was losing my mind, but the house was just waking up, and with each room I entered, pieces of my past slipped back into place. Fights, laughter, shadows, whispers. The night my father disappeared, the screaming, the blood, my mother's hand covering my eyes, the lie they told me. He left it, he didn't. The truth lived in the basement, just like the letter warned. And still, I went. The stairs groaned beneath me as I descended. The air thickened, the darkness pressing in. There was a smell, damp earth, and something metallic. At the bottom was a single light bulb swinging faintly from the ceiling. In the corner, a door I had never noticed it before. It was small, padlocked, but the lock was already open. I pushed it open, the hinges shrieking like they remembered pain. Inside was a room, and inside that room was him, alive. Barely, shackled to the wall. My father. But it wasn't just him. There were records, journals, photographs, proof. Of what he'd done. Of what Leah and I had seen. Of why she ran, and why I had forced myself to forget. I staggered back upstairs in shock. And there she was, Leah, standing in the kitchen, crying. I thought if I stayed, he'd never stop, she said. I thought if I ran, he wouldn't find me. But he did. She lifted her shirt to show me a scar just beneath her ribs. I killed him, she whispered. I thought I did. But he didn't die. You buried it. I ran from it. The house, it kept him alive. Until now. I don't remember much after that. The police. The headlines. The questions. They found what we left behind. The town finally believed us. But the damage was done. We stayed a while. Long enough to face the memories. Long enough to tell the truth. And then one day, we left. Together. For the first time. In forever. I still dream of the house. Of the way it whispered when I walked. Of the way the mirrors seemed to reflect who I could have become. But I no longer fear it. Because I remembered. And the house, finally, let me go. Every room remembers. Part 2. The town watched us from behind curtains and coffee shop windows. Small towns don't forget, even if people pretend they do. The truth might have been exposed, but whispers outlast facts. Some people said we made it up. Others pitted us. A few believed us. But no one looked at me the same. The real prison wasn't the house anymore. It was walking the streets I grew up on with the weight of everything I knew now, knowing that somewhere inside me, a version of myself had lived with a monster and didn't realize it. Or maybe did and chose not to see it. We stayed in the house. For weeks. Some nights, Leah slept in the upstairs guest room. Some nights, she wandered the halls, pausing in front of old photo frames and doorways like they were graves. I think she was looking for herself. The girl she used to be before everything turned to ash. Me? I barely recognized my own reflection anymore. The memories didn't stop now. They came in flashes. Triggers. A smell, a word, the sound of a creaking stair. The more I let them come, the more I realized how much I had locked away. The things my father did, the things I didn't stop. But the house remembered point one evening. As rain tapped gently against the window panes, I stood in the kitchen staring at the wall above the stove. There had always been a family portrait there. I remembered it clearly. My mother's forced smile, my father's hand on my shoulder, Leah standing slightly apart from us. But the frame was gone now. Only a pale rectangle remained on the wall, like the memory of a memory that I turned to ask Leah if she knew where it had gone. But she wasn't there. That's when I heard the music. Piano keys. Not loud. Not chaotic. Just familiar. The old upright piano in the parlor had been broken since I was 15. The keys were chipped, some stuck, others silent. I hadn't heard it play in years, and yet it was playing now, soft, hesitant notes, like someone trying to remember an old tune that I followed the sound. But when I stepped into the room, it stopped. The bench was empty. My skin prickled that I crossed the floor and pressed a single key. Nothing. Dead. But on top of the piano, carved crudely into the dust, were three words. Do you remember? I wiped them away with shaking hands. Behind me, the hallway mirror cracked, just slightly, but enough. Leah came running, and I didn't have to say a word. She saw it, felt it too. The house was unraveling. Or maybe we were. That night, we sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets as thunder rolled in the distance. The sky hung low and purple, as if it, too, was remembering something heavy. Do you ever wish we could go back? I asked. Leah was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Go back to what? The lie? The fear? Or the version of us that didn't know yet? I don't know, I admitted. I used to. I used to want to erase it all, pretend it never happened. But now, she looked at me, her eyes tired but steady. Now I just want to carry it differently. I didn't ask what she meant. I understood. Some things never leave you, but you can shift the weight. Little by little, before we went to bed, she said something I never expected to hear. I had a daughter. My heart stopped. She wasn't looking at me when she said it. She's 6 now. Her name's Iris. She doesn't know about me. Not the real me. I gave her up. I didn't ask why. I knew why. She had been protecting her, and maybe herself too. That we stood in the quiet for a long time. Then I said, Tell me everything. And she did. The next day, the house gave us a gift. I in the attic, buried under boxes of old books and moldy blankets. We found a safe point, one I never knew existed. It took us 3 hours and a rusted crowbar to open it. Inside were letters, hundreds, all addressed to me, all from my mother. They were never mailed, never sent. Some dated back years. I in her careful, looping handwriting. She told me the truth of everything, what she knew, what she endured, what she tried to protect me from, why she stayed, and, eventually, why she ran. She had tried to take me with her once. The night she disappeared, I had been too afraid, so she left alone. She thought that by leaving, I'd be safer. But instead, I stayed behind with him. I read each letter like it was oxygen. I wept until my hands ached. And when I was done, I held them against my chest like they could stitch the pieces of me back together. Days passed. Leah began smiling again. A little. I started sleeping through the night. The house grew quieter. As if, by acknowledging its truths, we had loosened its grip. One morning, I woke up and walked into the living room. The radio was on, but not static, not haunting music, just silence. A silence that wasn't threatening anymore. I smiled. That afternoon, Leah packed a small bag. "I'm going to find her," she said. I nodded. "I'll be here." She paused at the door. "Will you?" And I answered honestly, "For now." That night, I wandered into the basement one last time. It was clean now. Empty. No blood. No chains. Just stillness. I stood there, in the dark, and whispered a name I hadn't said aloud since I was a boy. Mom. And I swear, I felt a warmth in the air, like forgiveness. The house didn't forget, but it forgave. And so did I. One memory at a time. To be continued. Every room remembers. Part 3. It was late autumn when I decided to leave. The trees on the hill had turned to fire, burnt orange, blood red, deep gold, like the house was wrapped in the final colors of memory. There wasn't much keeping me there anymore. Leah had gone weeks ago. She sent a single postcard from a coastal town up north. A hand-drawn flower on the front, 2 words on the back. She smiled. That was all I needed to know. I packed light. A duffel of clothes. A shoebox of letters. A Polaroid Leah and I had taken on the porch. 2 ghosts finally learning how to be human again. Before I locked the front door for the last time, I stood in the hallway, staring at the cracked mirror one last time. It was still broken. But I didn't feel broken anymore. I whispered, "Thank you," into the silence. The floor creaked behind me. I turned. Nothing. Just the house. Breathing. Waiting. The drive into town was quiet. Peaceful. But something shifted when I stopped for gas on the edge of the main road. The woman behind the counter was older, wrapped in a thick cardigan, silver hair tied in a loose braid. She looked at me once, then looked again, like recognition was pulling her forward from some dark, buried place. "You're the boy from the hill," she said. I nodded slowly. "I used to be." Her eyes didn't blink. That house was built wrong. Every inch of it. The wood came from a ship that never should have been salvaged. A ship that went down with all souls lost. I didn't know what to say. She leaned in. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Every family that's lived there ends." She stared at me, her breath shallow. "But you didn't end, did you?" "No," I whispered. "I didn't." She shook her head. "Then it still wants something from you." I left quickly, heart racing, palms sweating. The house was miles behind me, but I felt its eyes. That night, I checked into a roadside motel just outside the city. Small, quiet, dim. I couldn't sleep. My thoughts tangled with the woman's words that "it still wants something from you." Just after midnight, my phone buzzed out a message. Unknown number. No name. No icon. Just text. It said, "You forgot the photograph in the piano." My breath caught. No one knew about the piano. No one but me. And Leah. I called her. Straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I just stared at the screen. By morning, I was back on the road. Against every instinct, against all sense, I drove back to the house, back to the place I said I would never return. It looked exactly the same, but something was wrong. The front door was open, and there were footprints in the dust on the floor, small, bare, childlike. I followed them through the living room, into the parlor. The piano. The lid was closed. I reached for it slowly. My fingers shook. I lifted it. There, beneath the yellowed sheet music, was a photograph of a girl. 6 years old. Dark hair, bright eyes, smiling, standing on the porch of this house that I flipped it over at a date point 2 weeks ago, and a name, Iris, that I staggered back, and then my mind raced. Leah never told me she brought her here. She said she wouldn't. She promised, and then I saw it. Carved into the piano would point 3 fresh words, not scratched, not etched, carved. She lives here now. I bolted from the house that I called Leah again. Still nothing that I drove to the town's tiny police station. They looked at me with half-curious, half-dismissing eyes that I showed them the photo. They ran checks. But there was no record of a girl named Iris living in that county. No school enrollment, no hospital visits, no official birth certificate. Just a photo and a name. I couldn't sleep that night. Or the one after. The motel room grew colder, quieter. Sometimes I thought I heard piano keys echoing in the pipes. Other times I woke up with the scent of lavender filling the room. And then the dreams came back. The house, but not as it was the AS it used to be. Alive. New. Full. Laughter in the halls. A child's footsteps upstairs. And always, always, a door that wouldn't open. The one in the basement. But in the dream, it was Iris who stood in front of it, alone, smiling, and saying, "Come see what I found." I never saw Leah again. Not in person. But sometimes, late at night, when the silence stretches too long, I check my messages. There's never a new one except for the last one she ever sent. Just 4 words. She's not mine anymore. And somewhere back on the hill, that house stands, still, still breathing, still remembering, still waiting, because not every door stays closed forever, and not every child is born innocent. Some are born from memory, some from regret, and some belong to the house itself. Every room remembers. If you just listen to Every Room Remembers, a story of memory, guilt, and the shadows that never really leave. That if you felt the silence, if you walked those creaking floors with us, if part of you still hears the piano playing in the dark, then you already know some houses are more than wood and stone. Some are alive. Thank you for staying with me through the quiet, the grief, and the echo of forgotten things. If this story moved you, unsettled you, or stayed with you, subscribe to Stories Creeper for more long, immersive tales to keep you company through the night. And remember, some doors are meant to stay closed, especially the ones inside us. If this story whispered to something inside you, if the house still echoes in your mind, then don't leave quietly. Like the video to keep the stories alive. Share it with someone who's heard whispers in the dark, and subscribe to Stories Creeper for more tales that linger long after the last word. Because here, every story remembers you too.